Yeah, let's start with the questions. Great presentation. You know that I remember you last year, and I believe was about the same composition. I don't know if you're missing anybody from last year. You, the only thing you're taking a different approach. No, I'm very pleased with the presentation.
Yeah, guys, really good presentation. I learned a lot. A couple of questions. How reproducible would you look to see this solution in other areas, or has there been any thought with respect to that? And secondly, have you quantified in economic terms the value? Numbers always tend to raise eyebrows, so that's a second question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So talking about how replicable this is highly replicable. It's a low-cost alternative, and it can be replicated literally anywhere in the globe. The data from these satellites have been existing for years. It's just a matter of determine the watershed that we want to investigate, and then honing in on starting developing all these agricultural plots of land.
Regarding your cost question, we did not mention costs in the presentation because there are three fundamental cost drivers for the development of riparian buffer system. The first would be land acquisition. And we simply don't know what the legal mechanism for land acquisition or eminent domain or whatever you may wish to call it will be in Cuba now, let alone in 5, 10, 15 years from now when we may be looking to implement a system like this. We don't know what property values are. We don't know what property is publicly or privately owned. So we do not feel adequately informed in order to comment on the land cost. Regarding the other two costs, we have the cost of plants and the cost of the labor to plant them. The good part about labor is we need very little equipment and we could use very primitive equipment. However, we don't know what the labor market conditions would be in the Havana province now, and we certainly don't know what the availability of labor would be down the road. So that would be a largely labor-dependent cost. And for the cost of plants, it depends on whether we want to go with pre-grown potted plants from perhaps a nursery in Cuba or a nursery here in South Florida. If we were to use plants from Florida, you would have the very high cost of shipping them to Cuba. You could also potentially have customs and border control issues because they are biological cargo. And we can't quantify what the costs of dealing with those issues would be. The good news is if you wanted to go with the seeded approach, the cost of the seeds is typically less than the cost of the carton that they come in. So that would certainly be a low-cost alternative there. But due to the ambiguities with land acquisition and labor, we don't feel confident enough to give you a hard number.
Great, except I was more looking towards, I kept let you go because it was good, more about what was the economic benefit when you're coming in. Have you quantified that? So to make it, here's how much you save, here's how much you do, versus other methods of treatment or whatever or that was necessary. That was more along the lines.
All right, the economic benefit comes from two primary factors, being tourism and then the public health impacts of a better water supply. Dealing with the public health impacts, the cost of a riparian buffer or a low-impact treatment is traditionally at least 90% less than the cost of a conventional mechanical treatment plant that you might see here in the United States for sanitary sewer. So what that difference would be, we really don't know, but we do know that it would make the water treatment side of the equation far less expensive. Because by cleaning up the aquifer, we could go with a very simple coagulation water treatment scheme that may cost 10 to 12 cents per 100 gallons of treated water, which would be far less expensive than the bottled or high-intensity treatment options. Regarding tourism, we really can't place a price on the quality of the waters, but we do know that this technique will improve the beaches dramatically because the Almendares does empty into the ocean. The Almendares also flows through the Miramar and Vedado districts of Havana, which may see tourism develop in the future, and this would help facilitate that.
Excellent presentation again, and I am pleased that you took Dr. Bueno's suggestion as a graduate of FIU, so I congratulate you. Yeah, to my alumni. Anyways, I got a question, just simply from, you spoke to the cost and you assumed that you would have to acquire the land through eminent domain or so. And I guess this is more of a suggestion just to keep in your mind, because I believe, same as your last year's presentation and this year's presentation, you've pinpointed a reasonable solution to a real problem. Think about, rather than acquiring the land, possibly developing land use policies that require the planting of materials on properties. Did you consider that? Was that any kind of the discussion?
Yeah, we did consider it. And in terms of building on what Eric said about tourism, we have numerous sources and newspaper clippings that constantly complain about the status of the Almendares River as well as the Ejército Rebelde Reservoir. You know, there's a reporter that has complained about, dead animals being thrown in the river and, causing foul smells and just, unappealing sights. We believe that if, some sort of river walk is planted through this, there's going to be, lighted, add some, park features, where children and, other people can entertain themselves. This could boost tourism because right now no one really wants to go visit a lake that's, contaminated and it smells bad. However, if you make a kind of, un paseo por el río, you could garner tourists. There are going to be people, selling things and just increase the number of people that, visit the area.
Thank you, guys. Excellent.
It was a very professional presentation, well organized. Congratulations. And obviously, the topic is of primary importance to future Cuba in reconstruction of its infrastructure before the economy gets too expanded and rich. And because I understand, coming from the time I lived in Venezuela, that the Lake of Valencia there, one of the few Mediterranean lakes in the world, no access to the sea, has been impacted terribly with the fertilization and so on, and has damaged a tremendous touristic potential that a very large lake would have in the middle of Venezuela. So this is very important. I was going to ask you about the cost. You explained it very well, why you didn't go into that, and I appreciate that response. But then my question then becomes, what is the feasibility then that you see in implementing this rather possibly expensive project in Cuba?
Great, thank you very much for asking that. In terms of feasibility, what I first want to do is compare it to the alternative. Because given that we need to clean up the water body due to the public health issue, the alternative to the low-impact development riparian buffer would be a conventional mechanical treatment system, which we build all of the time here in the United States. And they consume a great deal of energy, a great deal of maintenance employees, a great deal of spare parts and repairs, and they're costly to run. Our development has no electricity required, no complex machinery required. So given the lower level of development of Cuba's technical industry than ours, we feel that this is the most feasible solution to the problem. Regarding actual implementability of this plan, we feel that a land grant approach, similar to what's used in the United States for major infrastructure, would be generally acceptable, given the nature of the Cuban community and the fact that not all, but a large part of the river flows through suburban or lower developed areas. So you could have land grants along agricultural areas, land grants that see joint use as parks and recreation facilities, educational facilities, and the like. So we feel that of all of the options, this is the most readily implemented.
Just to congratulate you on a great paper and presentation. I think I also work on Cuba, and there's usually no data, let's say, on fiscal issues in Cuba. So one thing would be to say, oh, I cannot write on this because there's no data. So I congratulate you for looking for a method that, while I'm not a specialist in this, it seems quite credible to me.
Just a final question. Is pure coincidence that all of you wearing pink ties, or you plan ahead of time? Just wondering.
I think you owe this, Leonard.
I think it just started organically last year. Somebody said pink ties, and here we are.
Okay, thank you.